Suede's Pokemon journey is gone. The channel will be deleted in maybe 3 months, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. This isn't hyperbole or catastrophizing. I have just been targeted by a new technique, easily executable by Japanese corporations, that can destroy any anime-based YouTube channel quickly and cheaply without going through any of YouTube's counterclaim systems. If other companies find out about it, all creators featuring Japanese media without an MCN or a massive following, and even those who do that have a long backlog, could be removed from YouTube permanently within months from now. Literal months. I feel like the internet might want to know about this. Here's what happened to me over the last week or so, why it's important, and how if YouTube doesn't make big changes soon, any creator using Japanese IP in any way could have their channel, which may well be their entire livelihood, deleted and have to pay a large fine on top of it. All completely legally. At any time. It could have happened just now to your favorite anime YouTuber, and there's basically nothing they can do about it. That's how urgent this is. If you want it in the simplest possible terms, you can skip to the overview chapter at the end, but for those who want all the context, watch on. I've been making humorous reviews of Pokemon videos for about 8 years. I make a living through them. I have over 7 million views and have about 20,000 subscribers. I've tried to make it as transformative as possible with short clips and voiceover. Like with many similar channels such as Team 4-Star, I have had run-ins with the company that owns the rights to the Pokemon anime. In my case, Shogakukan Shueisha Productions, hereafter referred to as Showpro. Now, right off the bat, stop with the "but fair use" outrage immediately. Fair use is not a right. It's only a defense that can be used in court to argue that clips of intellectual property can be used in parody, satire, education, or critique as long as it's transformative. Legal Eagle did a comprehensive video on this, which I've linked in the description. It's never a guarantee ever, especially with abridged-style content, which mine was at least adjacent to. If it can feasibly replace the original by recapping the plot, even in a parody context, it's still unlikely to fall under fair use. Because of this, even though I've received many strikes and had my channel taken down once before, the fact that I was able to counterclaim meant that I could always call their bluff, and since I was always relatively small, I was never worth the hassle. Until now. Showpro has come up with a gambit that doesn't require adhering to fair use or playing by YouTube's rules in any way, and it works, ruthlessly and efficiently. So what did they do? Well, they basically sent a brick through my window. About a week ago, I got an email from YouTube Copyright. It seemed to be a pretty standard counter-notification notice, however the wording at the bottom was different. We've received the attached court complaint in regard to this content. The content will not be reinstated at this time, but the copyright strikes will be resolved unless a court determines copyright infringement has occurred. If you get a final judgment in your favor, you can submit proof of such on this thread, and the videos may be restored. This is what was attached. A court complaint by Showpro entirely in Japanese. Since I was lucky enough to have a friend who could read it, I found out that Showpro was basically serving a small claim, demanding I pay 80,200 yen as well as legal fees for using their IP without permission. On the YouTube side, the phrasing of the email meant that while the videos currently count only as copyright claims, the instant this issue is resolved, they will become strikes. Since there's well over 3 videos that have been claimed, this means bye-bye channel. So of course, all of the videos mentioned in it were taken down and the option to counterclaim had been removed. The only option left was contact claimant. I had no idea how to respond, especially since not only was the notice entirely in Japanese, but after having it legally translated by a third party at my own expense, I found that there was no time frame given and most bizarrely no means by which to actually pay the fee. That wasn't the only weird thing about it. Showpro didn't demand all of my videos be taken down, just 89 of the over 200 possible videos that could easily meet the same criteria. Then there was that amount. 80,200 yen is almost $700 in the US, or just over 1,000 in New Zealand where I live. It was big enough to hurt a lot, but suspiciously small in comparison to what they could feasibly demand. The way the number was reached was unusual too, as instead of demanding a percentage of the revenue I received, they demanded 0.02 yen per view as damages. Now I want you to remember that while I go into a brief tangent. So as Showpro demanded compensation, I scrambled to find legal representation for the first time in my life. It was hard enough to find a New Zealand lawyer who dealt in internet-based IP disputes, and then they said they couldn't help me as it was also for an international dispute, which they weren't equipped for. Then I sought out international dispute lawyers who could help but often didn't specialize in IP disputes. Finally, after one of the 20 different law firms I approached had the decency to tell me that this issue most likely needed representation in Japan, I now either had to pay megabucks for a huge firm to outsource representation in Japan, or try and find a lawyer there myself, one who speaks English and specializes in IP law. Finally, after a referral, I found this legal unicorn, and he was able to help in some ways, if not others. This isn't his fault. He did a great job. Basically, he said that there wasn't anything I could do as the claim was under Japanese jurisdiction, and as Totally Not Mark has helped people understand in his latest video, also linked in the description, Japan has a very different stance on fair use. basically non-existent. So while I could feasibly lawyer up if the claim came from the US and at least argue fair use, even if my odds might not have been great, since the videos could be seen in Japan, Japan can prosecute me, and I can't argue fair use in a country where it doesn't really exist. This was bad enough, but then the lawyer hit me with a bombshell that made everything click into place. He told me that if I refused to pay, it would cost Showpro much more than 80,200 yen in legal fees to make me pay from New Zealand. Suddenly, it all made sense. The large but not too large fine, the vague and obtuse documentation, the fact that the fine was based on views and not revenue, this was basically an international slap suit. John Oliver did a good video on them, link in the description, but at its most basic, a slap suit or strategic lawsuit against public participation is when a plaintiff makes it needlessly difficult, confusing, or expensive for the defendant to respond, burdening them with the cost of a legal defense until they abandon their criticism or opposition. The lawyer I talked to said I have about 3 months before the judgment on that complaint goes through Japanese court, at which point the takedowns will all become official strikes. The channel will be deleted, and I'll be given the means to either pay the fine, ignore it, or fight it. If I pay, I admit fault, so the strikes stick, the channel is deleted, and the whole thing becomes legal precedent. If I ignore it, they probably won't pursue it, but the channel will still be deleted, and I'll never be able to visit Japan, one of my lifelong dreams, without the risk of being grabbed at the border and fined. If I choose to fight, I would have to spend massive amounts of money hiring an international lawyer in a country where fair use isn't really a thing. I would be 99% likely to lose and bankrupt on top of it. Basically, it was pure intimidation tactic since they don't have any financial reason to pursue the fine, but I have to spend big bucks that I don't have scrambling to translate and detangle the process if I want to even get to the point of challenging them. The sad and terrifying truth is they're right, and they are completely within their legal rights to do so. I want to emphasize here that although they are doing it in a particularly petty, aggressive, and jerkish way, Showpro are not doing anything wrong. The videos could be seen in Japan. Japan doesn't really have fair use. I'm a sitting duck. Everyone is. But then it gets worse. Do you remember that I said they struck less than half of the videos on the channel? That means they can do it again. I'm a small creator only able to get by on YouTube with the support of a dedicated Patreon, and I'm very lucky in that regard. But I can't afford a $1,000 fine more than once in a year, let alone a month. I can't fight it as it takes place in Japan, where fair use isn't really a defense. I've been told by YouTube that the strikes caused by the complaint mean my channel will be taken down soon. I don't have clout, I don't have many followers by YouTube standards, and I don't have the financial or mental capacity to fight it. I'm only one guy with autism, barely earning enough to support my family. I'm not built to handle this. Unless a miracle occurs, it looks like they've finally beat me, and for the majority of cases, they could beat everyone else too. Now, I've heard tons of great and heartwarming support from everyone on Twitter and Patreon, and I appreciate all of it in this garbage fire, but much of the well-meaning encouragement is somewhat misguided. For instance, some say, what about video games? I know this all seems weird when Japanese video games are generally accepted as fair game on YouTube, occasional shenanigans notwithstanding, but the fact is that Let's Plays and streaming became a cultural zeitgeist beyond the level that TV or film reviews ever were or are, and cracking down on them causes a global response that just doesn't exist for film and TV reviews. Not to mention individual game experiences are consumed actively while film media is consumed passively. Watching someone play isn't the same experience as playing it yourself, but TV reviews can be seen as the same product, at least in Japan. The other one was, what about Totally Not Mark? Yes, I've actually talked to Mark. He's scared too. He was only able to fight against the strikes and gain geo-blocking by working within YouTube's America-based system where he could use fair use as a defense. But if Toei hears about and tries the Showpro gambit, he has no defense. Since the damages cited by the company are based on views, it doesn't matter if the videos are geo-blocked now. What matters is the views they accrued then. Speaking of geo-blocking, that was the other thing brought up in the Twitter replies. Why can't I just make it so that the offending videos can't be viewed in Japan, meaning that if they want to prosecute, they have to go through a country that does acknowledge fair use? Well, unfortunately, this leads to the scariest part of all, the part that involves everyone on YouTube. So here's the whole thing laid bare. Everyone who has used Japanese IP in any way is now in big trouble. At least one company has found a seemingly foolproof means to take down any video that offends them as long as it was ever able to be viewed in Japan up until this point. Which is most of them, as geo-blocking isn't available to creators without a significant IP of their own or a membership in an MCN. They found a way to circumvent both the counterclaim system and fair use, and they can do it in 2 easy steps. Step 1. Create a rudimentary small claim in Japan, aim it at the offending creator, and send it to YouTube, demanding that the videos be taken down. Make the fine too big to ignore, but too small to be worth legal fees. Make it confusing and obtuse. Step 2, since it counts as legal proceedings, YouTube steps back and washes their hands. The videos go down instantly with no option to counterclaim. The YouTuber is forced to challenge you in your country. This will be near impossible for them without expensive representation. That's it. Boom. An easy and efficient way to remove videos with anything you don't like that has your IP on it outside Japan. No risk of counterclaim, no fair use, point and click. But here's the real end point of all this. If this becomes a precedent, anime YouTube could be effectively gone in months. I may be the first, but I'm almost definitely not going to be the last, and all of your favorite anime YouTubers, big and small, could be hit with the Shopro Gambit right now. Totally not Mark. He survived a big takedown, but only because Toei worked through YouTube's counterclaim system. All his videos that have ever been available legally in Japan are fair game for the Shopro Gambit. He could be gone tomorrow. So could Team 4-Star. So could Little Karibo. So could Mother's Basement. So could Super Eyepatch Wolf. So could any YouTuber who has ever used any anime clips at all. If they contain the IP, the company can slap them with a small claim and drag them to a court that doesn't recognize fair use. Unless the video fits into the tiny definition of Japanese fair use, and even if it does, they'll still be saddled with massive legal fees, they will always lose. And the channel is gone forever. As I said, the sad thing is, even with my extensive searching, I don't think there's any way to stop this. I don't know when it'll happen, or even if it'll happen, but from this moment on, there are 1,000,000 swords hanging over 1,000,000 heads, all held up by a single hair each. They might never drop, but they might also all drop tomorrow. As far as I can tell, there's no way to stop this, but there is one way to prevent this from happening in the future. For anime YouTube to survive, all creators need geo-blocking. If YouTube wants anime-based content, or any kind of Japanese IP-based content, not to be effectively purged, they will need to allow all creators to choose which countries their videos can be seen in, fast. If videos containing Japanese IP are allowed to be blocked in Japan or other countries that don't really recognize fair use, it means that rights holders in those countries will need to work through countries that do. Again, fair use is not a right or a catch-all, it's only a defense, but it is still a defense. Currently, only creators that belong to multi-channel networks or own a significant IP of their own have access to geo-blocking. But if YouTube wants to make it so that anime and Japan-based content in the future are not subject to the instant whims of cold international corporations, this must be changed. Unfortunately, this is not as clear-cut as it sounds. This is a known issue at YouTube, and though allowing all creators geo-blocking will provide a small but vital amount of protection to their users, many of the lawyers I spoke to agree it's also a hotbed for piracy, and it'll open up another massive can of legal worms. Dailymotion, one of the only other semi-viable hosting sites, allows geo-blocking for all users, so it is possible, but YouTube is much, much bigger and more gears are in place. There isn't an easy solution, but the issue needs to be made aware of. Geo-blocking for all. Make it a conversation. One thing is for certain, though. The imminent threat of near-instant dismissal simply for using any Japanese IP also needs awareness. Fast. Those who watched my videos while they were still up know that I never actually did a call to action, as I found them tacky. But since this channel might not even exist in the next few days, screw it. Like, comment, subscribe, and especially share. This needs to trend. People need to be warned, and YouTube needs to be made aware of this issue. Make sure this video is seen everywhere. Share it on all social media and use the hashtags ShowProGambit and GeoBlocking for all. Make your own videos about the issue. Tell your favorite large anime YouTubers about it. We've all learned long ago that nothing happens on this site unless something goes viral and a noise is made. So please, make some noise. Whether or not anything happens, everyone needs to know just how dangerous using Japanese IP has suddenly become. This channel is on borrowed time. In about 3 months, whether I pay the damages or not, the strikes will stick and the channel will be gone. I put up this video so that any of my current subscribers who haven't been following me on Twitter notice it, but it's the last video on here. But I can't give up. My family depends on me, Journey has helped others through bad times, and I've only been able to stand as an example of autism not hindering a career due to the amazing support of everyone who believes in me, patrons and viewers alike. I've survived by adapting before, and I'm willing to do it again, at least a few more times before finally rolling over and letting an ableist society defeat me. I have one last call to action. My new channel is in the description. If you enjoyed Journey or any of my ramblings, or heck, even if you just feel sorry for me and want to see what I do next, I humbly ask that you migrate there and subscribe so that we can make a fresh start. My Pokemon journey will not end yet, and all that it was won't fade into the ether either. I still have the scripts, I still have the funding, and I still have a chance. All that's left is to find what works. All monetization on this video will go towards the fine, any legal fees, and towards retooling the new channel so that Pokemon Journey can still continue in a safer format. There's more details on my Patreon if you want to be a part of that. But otherwise, that's it. I'm glad that I've been able to entertain all of you for so long. For 8 years I was able to make a stable living for my family despite being disabled, and made people laugh at my own pace. Nearly 200 episodes, specials, and movies I was able to share with you all, growing and improving and making awesome memories based on a shared love of a formative piece of media in our lives. I'm sad that it has to be scrapped so suddenly, and even though Journey will continue in the new channel, there was a charm to this format that will always be sorely missed. It was fun. Thank you for indulging me, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.